Hi guys. Today's topic is about ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. There are three learning objectives in this topic, and I hope that by the end of this topic, you should be able to first understand the ethical issues faced by international businesses. Second, identify the causes of unethical behaviors by managers. And third, describe the different philosophical approaches to ethics. Ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability are social issues that arise frequently in international business. Many ethical issues rooted due to differences in political system, laws, economic development, and culture. So, it might be normal in one country and illegal in another. Therefore, it is incredibly difficult to come up with global standards. Ethical issues and social responsibility are related too, but are not the same as legal issues. When laws are silent on a particular matter, international business people tend to step into a gray area of personal ethics and business responsibility. Ethical behavior is personal behavior in accordance with guidelines for good conduct or morality. Ethical dilemmas are not legal questions. When a law exists to guide a manager toward a legally correct action, that path must be followed. In an ethical dilemma, there is no right or wrong decision, but there are alternatives which that may be equally valid in ethical terms depends on one's perspective. In addition to the need for individual managers to behave ethically, businesses are expected to exercise corporate social responsibility, which refer to the practice of going beyond legal obligation to actively balance commitment to other stakeholders such as investor, customer, other companies, and communities. Corporate social responsibility, or well known as CSR, includes a wide variety of activities, including giving to the poor, building schools in developing countries, and protecting the global environment. So now let's see what are the most common ethical issues involved when doing business internationally. In terms of employment practices and human rights, suppose that work conditions in a host country are inferior to those in a multinational home countries, and practices such as child labor are common practices. Thus, which standard should be applied, home or host country, or something in between? For example, workers at a Foxconn factory in China, a leading supplier to Apple, due to charges about poor working conditions at Foxconn plants, Apple and Foxconn have to took steps to improve the work environment. Another example, some companies operate sweatshop factories in which they employ child labor or work long hours for very low wages, often in harsh conditions. Consider one case publicized by human rights and labor group investigating charges of worker abuse at the factory of one of Nike Vietnamese supplier. The Rana Plaza factory collapsed in April 2013, killed around 1,134 workers, and injured thousands more, was the deadliest disaster in the history of the global apparel industry. Environmental regulations. Companies sometimes purposely escape regulation by moving their production to a country with lax regulation, where they are free to pump pollutants into the atmosphere or dump them in oceans or rivers, thereby harming these valuable global commons. But nowadays, most countries have tightened the environmental regulation, even the previous lax countries. Hence, today's companies pursue green initiative to reduce their toll on the environment and to reduce operating costs as well as boost profit margin. Corruption. Similar to other cultural and political elements, the prevalence of corruption varies from one country to country. In certain countries, bribes are routinely paid to distributors and retailers in order to push a firm products through distribution channels. Bribes can mean the difference between obtaining an important contract and being completely shut out of a market. But corruption is detrimental to society and business. Among other things, corruption can send resources towards inefficient use, hurts economic development, distort public policy, and damage national integrity. This graph shows the corruption perception index in the world. Countries with the highest score have the lowest level of corruption. So we can see that the top three most free corruption countries are Denmark, Singapore, and Netherlands. Here is an example to show a well-established multinational Siemens company which involved in a big-scale corruption scandal. They paid bribes to government officials and civil servants in all business units scattered in the world, from Bangladesh, Vietnam, Russia, and Mexico to Greece, Norway, Iraq, and Nigeria. Last, we have moral obligation of multinational corporation. Ethical obligation of multinational corporation are not always clear-cut. How should corporations handle ethical dilemmas regarding employment, human rights, corruption, and environmental pollution? Companies often receive pressure from customers and stakeholders to be transparent in ethical decision making. Yet, there is no universal worldwide agreement about what constitutes accepted ethical principle. This is the situation faced by Levi Strauss in Bangladesh, which is a good example to show how ethical dilemmas are situations in which none of the available alternatives seem ethically acceptable. But they have to think the best option, not only for doing the right thing, but for the company as well as also taking care of those children which have to work in order to put foods on the table. So we now know that ethical behavior is doing the right thing. But why do managers behave unethically? There are six determinants of unethical behavior as shown in this slide. First, we have personal ethics, which refer to the generally accepted principle of right and wrong governing the conduct of individuals. Formation of ethics is guided by our parents, our school, our religion, and the media. In some cases, expatriate managers may face pressure to violate their personal ethics because they are away from the ordinary social context and culture. Additionally, parent company may pressure managers to meet unrealistic goals that can only be fulfilled by acting unethically. Second, we have social culture. Some cultures, such as those that emphasize individualism and uncertainty avoidance, are more likely to stress ethical behavior because individualism emphasizes on individuality, whereas uncertainty avoidance tends to avoid being involved with anything that is wrong or negative. Third, decision-making processes, which happen when business people may act unethically when they fail to ask, is this decision or action ethical? Problems arise in processes that do not incorporate ethical consideration into business decision making. Hence, it is important to better understand how individuals make decisions that are ethical or unethical in an organizational environment. Fourth, leadership. A good leader will help to establish the culture of an organization and set the examples that others follow. This is because employees often take their cue from business leaders and act accordingly what should and should not be done. Fifth, unrealistic performance goals. Some companies pressure employees to meet unrealistic performance goals by cutting corners or acting unethically as long as the performance is achieved. Last, organizational culture, which refer to the values and norms shared among an organization's employee. Culture in some organizations does not encourage people to think through ethical consequences of decisions, and they only emphasize on achieving company goals and performance. Thus far, we have discussed the causes of unethical behavior. Yet, ethical standards vary from country to country. People in this world perceive ethical standards differently. However, there are three commonly cited philosophies approaches to ethics. First, cultural relativist view is the belief that ethical truths are not absolute but differ from group to group. Cultural relativism sees truth itself as relative and argues that right and wrong are determined within specific situations. The expression when in Rome, do as Roman does capture the essence of cultural relativism. Consider that a company opens a factory in a developing country and following local custom employ child laborers. The cultural relativist manager would argue that this company is acting appropriately and in accordance with local standard of conduct. Many people strongly oppose to this line of ethical reasoning. Second, we have righteous moralist view is the belief that a company should maintain its home country ethics wherever it operates because home country views of ethics and responsibility is superior to other views. Imagine a company that expands from its developed country base to an emerging market where local managers commonly bribe officials. Suppose headquarters detest the act of bribery and instruct its subsidiary manager to refrain from bribing any local situation. In this situation, headquarters is imposing its righteous moralist view on local managers. Third, normative view is a belief that ethical behavior standards are universal and firms and individuals should seek to uphold them consistently around the world. Here are some examples to illustrate the variation of ethical standards. For example, in China, counterfeiters may publish translated versions of imported books without compensating the original publisher or authors, as they didn't see any unethical issue about it. In parts of Africa, accepting expensive gifts from supplier is acceptable. Yet, giving gift is one example of bribery with the intention to receive certain favor in return in other countries such as Malaysia. In the United States, their CEO compensation is often 100 times greater than that of low-ranking subordinate. And in Finland and Sweden, they ban advertising aimed at children, as children should be protected instead of being taken advantage. But the practice is accepted in other parts of European countries. So that's all for today's topic. Thank you, and I see you in the next topic. Bye.